of these because these could be good or terrible, you know?
I don't think you should just read them arbitrarily.
I'm going to read them arbitrarily. It's going to be an exciting experiment.
Well, I don't approve, but okay.
Okay, here we go. I will even give the disclaimer. So, welcome everybody to an episode of Ghost Stories with Isibella. It is actually the 4th podcast on our new channel.
I think it should be Ghost Stories with Isibella and Professor Daniel.
Good. This is Professor Daniel over here. He's in colour of the owl. As you can see, we have a very scary background going here and a very pastel goth for some reason. In the future, we will actually be doing a proper setup, actually in our basement, with a lot more atmospheric background, I suppose. So the stories I'm going to be reading today are from, it was a dark and creepy night, which we've been reading from a week. You can find this book on Amazon. It's by Joshua P. Warren. And these stories I've not read before. The other ones, I had actually read them. These ones we're going on a limb, and maybe they'll be good, maybe they'll be terrible, but that's part of the joy of ghost stories. So without further ado, let's begin. They were never the same again. John Stagnaduria, mechanical designer, Bridgewater, Massachusetts, April 24th, 1980. This incident took place in the very early hours of April 24th, 1980 in Bridgewater, Massachusetts, a highly paranormal area. 3 guys that my sisters went to college with lived off campus in a rented home and had an event happen to them that would change their lives forever. As the 3 boys slept in their respective rooms, there was a loud crash and one of the boys felt a body come crashing down on top of him. At first he thought it was one or both of his roommates fooling around, and he tried to push them off of him and told them to stop messing with him. He opened his eyes and realized it wasn't them. He went into a complete panic. He was scared to death and started to scream uncontrollably. At this time, both of his roommates heard his pleas for help and ran to his aid. When they turned on the light to his room, they were faced with a charred body lying on top of their friend. What? This made them as scared, and they panicked as their friend, whom the burnt corpse... Hang on, this doesn't happen very often. I haven't read this story before, so I'm pretty sure of that. At this time, both of his roommates heard his pleas for help and ran to his aid. When they turned to the light in his room, they were faced with a charred body lying on top of his friend. This made them as scared and as panicked as their friend to whom the burnt corpse rested on top of. They said they could actually smell the burnt flesh. Holy crap. And it looked like this body was wearing a flight suit of some sort. The boys assumed it was some kind of pilot from the nearby South Weymouth Naval Air Station who had ejected from an aircraft. Suddenly the body disappeared in front of them all. This completely terrified all of them, and they could no longer sleep.
You think?
The next morning, while watching the news, they saw that there was a failed rescue attempt of the American hostages in Tehran, Iraq, Operation Eagle Claw. There were 8 airmen that burned to death in the morning when a helicopter and transport plane collided in the desert. This really freaked them out. My sister said the boys couldn't wait to move out of that house. They were truly terrified. The incident scared them, and all 3 were never the same again. Here's what I'm going to say about this. What is this with a lot of these ghost stories of A equals B at C? And by that I mean, you run into your friend's room, there's a burnt corpse lying on top of your friend. The next day you're watching the news and there's something happening far away in Tehran, right, in Iran. And you're like, oh yeah, it's Operation Eagle Claw, definitely. How do you put that connection together?
Well, that's an airman. I don't know if that's...
Is it? Is it? I mean, if you're in America and there's a dead...
Right.
Yeah.
And do they have any connection to it? I mean, it's not like...
If they were soldiers,
why would one of those airmen end up in their house?
On top of their friend. That's what definitely, I've got to say it here. So that's probably one of the strangest ghost stories I've ever read.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, ready for the title of this one? Professor?
Yeah.
The eyeball in my pocket.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're definitely giggling a bit tonight. Michael Melvin Adams, fitter, foreman, Alabama, 1973. Not long after moving to Irvington, Alabama, my cousin Tommy and I were exploring the woods behind my house. We walked into a clearing and saw an old house with a tin roof and a rocking chair sitting on front of a porch. I told Tommy we should check it out. We were only a few feet away from the open field, but as we made our way through the brush to the field, the old house had actually disappeared. We ran back and told our parents. They did not believe us. At that time, I was 12 and Tommy was 10. A couple of months later, I met up with a friend who was called Bubba to walk to another friend's horse barn, where she tended to her horse every Saturday morning. As we were walking, I'm just not really compelled to be controlled tonight. Let me start it again. A couple of months later, I met up with friend Bubba to walk to another friend's horse barn, where she tended to her horse every Saturday morning.
The girl's name is Bubba?
I will reread it. A couple of months later, I met up with my friend Bubba to walk to another friend's house who had a horse barn where she tended her horses every day.
So the other friend is...
Okay, I'm going to read it because I'm cutting this out. I didn't say anything this time. Okay.
Okay.
A couple of months later, I met up with my friend Bubba to walk to another friend's horse barn where she tended to her horses every Saturday morning. As we were walking, I kept feeling something rubbing on my leg between the pocket of my pants and my leg. I stopped and reached into my pocket and pulled out what looked like a real human eyeball. What? I screamed. My friend Bubba screamed. I can't take this seriously. I threw it on the ground and I stomped on the eyeball. We ran away very fast. So people are watching this, I've done 3 episodes of this podcast. I never laugh or break up laughing. I take it very seriously, but these stories are hilarious. I finally stopped and told Bubba we should go back and have another look at the eyeball. When we returned to the spot where the shoe marks were, the spot where I'd squished the eyeball on the ground, the eyeball was mysteriously missing. I told Bubba to never tell anyone about this strange occurrence until now. Sometime in the mid-90s, my cousin Tommy decided to commit suicide, and Bubba was hit and killed by a car. What? I'm sorry, I know this is a real story. Is that terrible? I'll just reread this, but this is very hard to take seriously. Sometime in the mid-90s, my cousin Tommy committed suicide, and Bubba was hit.
You are belittling Bubba's death.
I'm sorry. And Bubba was hit and killed by a car walking home one night. Maybe I'm next. Maybe I'm next.
Maybe.
I'm sorry. Oh my god. I've had a little bit of champagne tonight, but nothing to, This is not meant to be a comedy show, but perhaps I will make it... Actually, should we entitle it like Comedy Ghost Stories? Because the background's very comedic and everything's quite comedic, so... The Fighting Irish. God, everything's just making me...
Wait, that was the end of the story?
That was the end of the story. Maybe I'm next.
Just random Bubba got killed and then maybe he's next?
Tommy committed suicide.
What does that have to do with the eyeball?
Bubba was hit by a car.
What does it have to do with the eyeball?
Maybe I'm next. I don't know.
I mean, like, it'd be one thing if, like, Bubba got in a car accident and, like, lost his eyeball or something,
Something relevant.
Something
Again,
relevant.
It's for A equals B at C, you know?
Yes.
Okay. The Fighting Irish. Aline Sheenan, certified nursing assistant, Dublin, Ireland, 1992.
As long as it's not Notre Dame.
Oh, that's funny. Being British, I didn't quite pick up on that too. In the summer of 1992, I went to Ireland as a summer missionary on behalf of a large American Christian denomination, which had established a church in Dublin. I have a question for you that's not actually ghost related. No, he's not Irish. We watched recently the new Star Wars movie, The Force Awakens, and I was just thinking about it. There's this fantastic character that I really appreciate, and he's the one that says, he says, you can say that to Country Club, and he's Scottish, isn't he?
Yes, he's Scottish.
It's great. I just think it's a great character. Anyway, back to the story.
Something guild, right?
Yeah, Deaf Guild or something.
Deaf Guild.
It's Deaf something.
You think?
Yeah, for real. They're like deaf assassins or deaf something.
There's something guild, I thought.
Something deaf guild. I think that's
You
deaf.
could tell it to country club.
That's what he
good.
said. He said,
Yeah.
you can tell that to country club. That's what he said. And I was like, you're awesome. You're awesome. And he calls up the, what is the Empire called now?
The First Order.
The First Order. He got the droid. And that was great. Anyway, back to the story. I'm just going to redo it so I'll cut this everything. The Fighting Irish, Aline Sheenan, Certified Nursing Assistant, Dublin, Ireland, 1992. In the summer of 1992, I went to Ireland as a summer missionary on behalf of a large American Christian denomination which had established church in Dublin. Another woman, who was from Chicago, was also there as a missionary. She and I were renting a room together from an unmarried Irish woman who was a long-standing member of the Dublin church. She lived alone in a typical Dublin row home found in a suburb of Clonsilla, and our rented home had 2 twin beds side by side against one wall with a small footpath between them. I went to bed early one night, and as I drifted off to sleep, the Chicago woman stayed up late on her bed, sorting through her luggage. Later that night, in my sleep, I was interrupted as I sensed something between our beds. There was something standing beside me, staring down at me. I laid there quietly with my eyes closed, assuming that it had to be my Chicago roommate. Surprisingly, whoever it was punched their fist quite forcefully down into the side of my head. What? In pain, I screamed out, and as I raised my hand to my aching head, I was sure that I had blood running down the side of it. The Irish woman who owned the house had been asleep in her own bedroom across the hallway. She heard my scream, so she came racing into the rented room. The Chicago woman had been downstairs in the sitting room, and she also came tearing into the room, but several seconds later than the Irish woman. The Irish woman was immediately... What is it? The Irish woman and... What is it, Al? Can't you see I'm telling a very serious story? Okay. Yes, where were we? The Irish woman immediately snapped on the lights and ran to my bedside and shook me awake. As I awoke, I realized that I had screamed in my sleep and that there was no blood. I instantly felt very embarrassed for having voiced such a truly over-the-top scream for what had to have been a mere dream. I told the 2 of them what I had imagined, but also about me being convinced of a punch to the head which resulted in the blood. I told them that my head still hurt a little from the phantom pains of a punch that had obviously never happened. But then the Irish woman said, no, something did happen. She told us about how she had also been disturbed in her sleep and punched in the head. All these stories are so funny. I don't know why. I read through these and usually I actually bookmark them and then I pick the best ones. And this is just literally me reading you random stories. And they are fucking hilarious. She said that about 2 minutes before I screamed, she had been asleep on her queen-size bed, alone in the darkness of her room, when she woke up for no apparent reason. As she laid there, awake and dark for a few moments, she felt the corner of her mattress sprung up as if someone had been sitting on the corner of her bed while she slept. The Irishwoman's first impressions of the situation in her unlit bedroom was that an intruder had broken into her home and she was going to be attacked. She felt a punch to the head. She immediately stiffened from head to toe in fear. I can't take this seriously, Daniel. It's too funny. She managed to stifle that instinct to pretend that she was still asleep for a few more moments. And then when she heard me scream in the next room, she bolted out of her bed to my rescue. This was when I was in Chicago. This was when the Chicago woman spoke up. She said, I said something too. Was she punched in the head also? Let me go get my diary. I left it downstairs. It records everything. Turned out the Chicago woman had stayed up late to write her diary journal. She ran downstairs, snatched up her diary, returned with it, and less than a minute later, she showed us what she had been writing up until the moment of our screams. Her diary entry for the day consisted of mundane stuff mostly, including our castle visit earlier that day. She stated that she had taken some great photos, but then wrote, "I suddenly felt so ill, but not physically, more spiritually. I sensed something very oppressive here in my house, an evil presence.
Evil.
I can hardly breathe. Maybe if I just pray it will go away." And then her writing trailed off, because that was exactly when I had screamed and was punched in the head. I'm not making this shit up. And then, when she dropped her diary, she ran up the stairs to me. The three of us never discussed this occurrence again, though for the remainder of the summer we pushed it aside as if it never happened. When the summer ended, we all went our separate ways and have never seen or heard from each other again. I remain convinced to this day that it was not a dream that violently awoke me that night. I believe that there was definitely an intelligent, paranormal entity present that night, and for whatever reason, it did indeed punch me in the side of the head. And the who and the why of it remain a mystery to this day, but I maintain, without a doubt, it did happen. Let's do it. 22 minutes, totally fine. A little afternoon delight. Jennifer Ann Clavett, massage therapist, Middletown, Connecticut, 2012. Last year I started taking some antidepressant medication, and as a side effect, it put a dampener on me and my husband's nocturnal fun. A friend suggested I order a battery-operated device. Okay, this is definitely a comedy show. This is just come well off the fucking track. When it arrived... I'm sorry. Forgive me. I hope nobody ever watches this shit. When it arrived a few days later, it was so silly looking, but my husband and I had a good laugh about it and decided it was just too bizarre to actually use, and so we stuck it in a box in the bedroom on a closet high far above on a shelf. This box was securely on the shelf, and the length of the box pushed back all the way to the wall. The next night, around 3 a.m., my husband was awoken from a sound sleep because he felt something pinch him hard on his butt. I'm not making this shit up. I know you all think I'm making this up right now, but I'm not. It's in the book. It's in the book. Okay, guys, calm down, Isabella. Be professional. The next time, okay, so yeah, something pinched him hard on the butt. Thinking I had done it, he turned and saw I was facing away from him, fast asleep. Perplexed by this, he finally decided it must have been some kind of arousing dream. He got up to use the bathroom, and while he was standing in front of the sink, he felt all the hair on his neck rise. This creeped him out a great deal, and then he went back to bed. The next day was Saturday, and we engaged in a little afternoon delight with each other. Cuddling together after our afternoon delight, he shouted, "Ouch!" and demanded to know why I had pulled on a part of him so hard. I explained that I couldn't have possibly have done it, as his arms were outside the covers and mine went beneath the covers. He became very unnerved. We didn't know what to think. I don't know what to think either. The next evening we were downstairs watching TV when a loud bang came from the bedroom. My bird is now joining in because he thinks it's hilarious too. Concerned, we went to investigate the noise, but after a moment he called me upstairs. When I got to the doorway, he was standing with his hands on his hip, looking at me. In front of him, halfway across the bedroom floor, in a now open closet, was a box with a sex toy in it. That did it. We knew that something paranormal had attached itself to the thing. We wanted it out of the house ASAP. We took that toy and we took it out to a dumpster and threw it away, and then proceeded to smudge the house with sage. We smudged every nook and cranny and sprinkled salt across all of the windows and doorways. We never again had another questionable incident like this. And I am very grateful that I never used this strange phallus. I can't do it. I'm sorry, this has to be the last story. I can't do it. My eyes are watering. My nose is running. It's too funny.
Oh.
Oh my god. My husband and I think the attachment was to a succubus.
Yeah.
Because it made my poor husband the target of its affections.
Yeah.
We think it gathered energy from our sex toy and sexual encounter, and I would advise everyone to think twice before buying sex toys.
That's good
advice.
advice.
At the very least, to cleanse them well before you bring the sex toy into your home.
It's important to always clean your sex toy.
And with that, I would like to thank you all for sticking through shit with us. Paranormal Ghost Stories with Isabella.
Daniel.
Adieu.